I want to thank the media, but more importantly, I want to thank everybody that's standing behind me here. Because this is what it's about. When you come to a press conference of myself, Jesse Nevel, as a candidate, you're coming to a press conference of the people, of the people's movement. And you don't get to just hear the candidate, you have to listen to the voices and the struggles and the demands of the people. So I really appreciate everything that just came before me, and it's an honor to stand here before you and to announce again that we are demanding, the people are demanding, that we will be included in this debate that is being televised and co-sponsored by the Tampa Bay Times, Bay News 9, and the St. Pete College on July 25th at the Palladium Theater. Along with Eritha Akile Kenyon, the candidate for District 6 City Council, I filed to enter this race over 3 months ago. And a couple of weeks ago on the steps of City Hall, we announced that both myself and Akile have qualified to be on the ballot. As of this point, the qualification period ends tomorrow. As of now, the only 3 qualified candidates are Rick Baker, Rick Kreisman, and me. Yeah. And after weeks, unlike Kreisman and Baker, what it took for us to get to that point, as was mentioned, was weeks of rigorous work, building a people's movement, collecting nearly 2,000 signatures to ensure that my name and to ensure that reparations would be on the ballot for mayor on the August 29th primary election. As the only candidate in the mayor's race who represents the interests of the people of this city, who want to unite through a progressive vision of a city united through reparations and economic development for the Black community, it is my belief, and it is our belief, that this decision by the Tampa Bay Times, Bay News 9, and St. Pete College represents an attack on this quest for justice and reparations in the city of St. Petersburg. Beyond that, however, it is a basic undemocratic assault on the assumed First Amendment right to free speech. It represents an attack on the whole idea of democracy itself. It represents an attempt to silence the voice of the people from participating in this debate. It represents an attempt to control what issues will be talked about in this debate. You want it to be about the pier. You want it to be about the Tampa Bay Rays and the ferry across the bay. But it will not be about, it will be about Ashanti Butler, Dominique Battle, and Lanaya Miller. That's what this election is going to be about. It represents a gunshot in the war of ideas to stifle the people's movement from taking back our city from millionaires, billionaires, real estate land grabbers, gentrifiers, and big-moneyed political crooks. Yesterday's Tampa Bay Times newspaper had an article announcing the July 25th debate, written by the correspondent that you've assigned to write about the mayor's race, Charlie Frago. In that article, he wrote, Kreisman and Baker will have at least one additional opponent in the nonpartisan mayoral contest. Jesse Nevel, 27, qualified in the mayor's race. He is running in coordination with another candidate associated with the African People's Socialist Party. Frago continues, the Times, Bay News 9, and St. Pete College invited only Kreisman and Baker to the debate. In the absence of complete local polling, I want to talk about that for a second, the Times decided to rely on fundraising totals to determine which candidates would be invited. So the Pulitzer Prize winning shining example of journalistic integrity known as the Tampa Bay Times, of course, conveniently fails to mention that this $500,000 that these guys have each raised, that's not like some groundswell of support from small donations coming from thousands of people in this city, okay? If you look at his financial records, which are public, over half of the money that Kreisman has raised has come from corporations, it's come from big real estate developers, it's come from land speculators and lawyers. It's come from big money. Yeah. And of course, the same thing goes for the original Rick Kreisman, Rick Baker. So, the Tampa Bay Times, itself a corporation, deeply entrenched in the maintenance of the status quo, had already started calling this race as Rick Baker versus Rick Kreisman before Baker even filed. Before he even entered the race, you had decided on behalf of us, on behalf of the people, that our choices would be Rick Baker and Rick Kreisman. After Baker entered, the Times has done everything possible to deny the impact that this movement, that my candidacy and that Akile's candidacy has had on this election already. Yes. In a previous article published earlier this month on June 6th, Frago referred to myself and Eritha Kenyon as, quote, trailing in the local polls. So this is the vaunted prize-winning newspaper. What polls? Do 20 seconds of research. There was a poll early January and there was a poll in May. Neither of those polls asked voters what they thought about Jesse Nevel for mayor of St. Petersburg. What polls? So I asked Frago that when I saw him at a city council meeting. I pointed out to him, in fact, there were no polls. This is a complete fabrication. It was the opening sentence of the article about our announcement. He said he thought he had seen one and he would look into it. Eventually, he published a correction. Now, you would think a journalist would do some research before making such a loaded statement, unless the journalist is advancing a political agenda, not reporting the facts. If I hadn't pointed that out and exposed that lie, yesterday's newspaper probably would have said, based on polls, we have only invited Kreisman and Baker. But because we blew their cover, they were forced to admit that the only reason they invited Rick and Rick is because they have each over $500,000 in their bank accounts. They were forced to admit it. So that begs the question, what is the point of having a primary election if the Tampa Bay Times and Bay News 9 and St. Pete College are going to decide that the winners are those who raise the most money from real estate developers and corporations? The purpose of a primary election is that you have all the candidates, the city votes, and then you narrow it down to the top two for the general unless somebody gets more than 50% of the vote. So if you've already decided for us who the winners are, why have a primary election? Is the election all for show? Have the big moneyed rulers already made up their minds about who's going to pass through the primary? Who is this election for anyway? Is it for the people or is it for the billionaires? Is it for the Tampa Bay Times? I think these are serious questions that the Tampa Bay Times, Bay News 9, and both Rick Kreisman and Rick Baker need to answer. This morning we got to see Kreisman speak at a city council rally supporting a local ordinance supposedly designed to mitigate the influence of big money in local elections. Well, this rigged debate on July 25th is the highest example of big money's control over local elections that you've ever seen. So unless Kreisman is a liar and a hypocrite, I fully expect him to agree with me when I say that we have the right to be in this debate and the people of this city have the right to hear from all of the candidates who are running to be the next mayor, not just the ones backed by millionaires. I also think Bay News 9 needs to contact a lawyer as soon as possible because you are flagrantly violating FCC equal time rules. FCC equal time rules clearly state that all candidates in an election deserve equal time in media coverage. Now, I know what you're going to say. Well, there's 4 exemptions. One of them is bona fide newscasts, and a debate is considered a bona fide newscast. Yeah, a debate is considered a bona fide newscast if the news agency covering it is not also the news agency sponsoring it. Bay News 9 is both sponsoring and covering the July 25th debate. So in addition to being arrogantly disrespectful to the voting people of this city, you're also putting yourself at risk of facing litigation. I want the Bay News 9 to know that. Bay News 9 to know that. That's all I want to say about that right now. We really don't want to have to do that. We want this problem resolved by nightfall. And we are demanding that I, Jesse Nevel, will be in this debate and will be given equal time in the debate on July 25th, hosted by the Tampa Bay Times, Bay News 9, and St. Pete College. We call on every person in this city who believes in the principles of democracy and free speech to demand not only my right to be in this debate, but your right to hear all of the candidates who are in the running to run for the next mayor, not just the ones with millions of dollars in their pockets. We refuse to watch St. Pete get sold to the highest bidder. We will be in every debate. We will be in every debate in this election. I am guaranteeing that we will be in every single debate. This election will not be a debate between 2 competing sectors of the corporate elite. This election will be a debate between the people and the enemies of the people. The people want change. The people want unity. The people want justice. And justice begins with reparations and economic development for the Black community. So, in closing, to the Tampa Bay Times, to Bay News 9 and St. Pete College, you have my email address, you have my phone number, you know where to find me. We expect to hear from you by nightfall. And Rick, we will see you at the Palladium Theater on July 25th. The people will not be shut out of this process. We will not let that happen. You shouldn't even try. And at the end of our rallies, we usually say, we are winning. And I want to add, you are losing. Thank you.